So a few days ago, I introduced the Google Ads Optimization Score and the Recommendations tab, and I talked a little bit about how the recommendations shouldn't always be trusted. Today, I'm going to go through some of the common recommendations we see and what kind of potential impact you can expect if you do choose to apply them. But first, I want to explain why you can't always trust Google's recommendations. When you're evaluating any suggestions from Google, it's important to remember that what's good for Google isn't always good for you. Any extra cost to the advertiser is additional revenue for Google. This means Google benefits from advertisers increasing their costs, whether it drives additional results or not. This is why you'll often see recommendations that talk about expanding your reach or avoid missing out on additional results. But nowhere does Google promise that implementing recommendations will improve your KPIs or your bottom line. So whether you're working in an agency or you're a freelancer or an in-house marketing specialist, it's important that when you're reviewing these recommendations, you still use your common sense and you don't just blindly accept them. You might think that Google's just trying to help, but I think it's also fair to be a bit skeptical. So with that said, let's jump into the types of recommendations that Google often gives you. Some recommendations will point out pretty critical issues in your account or things that need to be fixed. A great example of this is Fix Your Audience Targeting, which tells you that your audiences are too small for your ads to serve to them. Another example is if your conversion rate drops off all of a sudden, you might get this recommendation that tells you your conversion tracking needs to be checked. These types of recommendations can be super helpful and help you to spot issues that you might not have otherwise noticed. There are also recommendations that simply just help you to keep your account more organized by highlighting different keywords that are either redundant or they just aren't serving, so there's no point of having them in your account. I would say most recommendations fall into this third category, which is best practices. These are usually helpful or they can be helpful, but also sometimes irrelevant depending on your client's industry and the nuances of their business. For example, a lot of our B2B client accounts receive this recommendation to add price extensions. However, this doesn't make sense for them because they don't have fixed prices for their services. One of the suggestions I do really like is this suggestion to lower your bids. This basically just points out where you're overbidding and where you could get more clicks within your budget. You'll also see recommendations like this one, which just suggest you implement features that you may not be using. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff. So these are the recommendations you should either avoid or at least think carefully before applying. One of the main themes here is smart bidding, which is something Google has really been pushing over the last few months. Smart bidding strategies like target CPA involve giving up the control you have over your bids and allowing the system to bid higher or lower to achieve certain results. Now, I say achieving results very loosely because Google has no obligation to meet your targets, but this is basically just a way for you to tell the system what results you're trying to optimize for. This sounds great in theory, but the problem is that your account needs a certain volume of conversions every month in order to make these strategies work. So if you're a small or medium business, or you're just getting fewer than 30 conversions a month, choosing one of these strategies is likely just going to skyrocket your cost per click. They're also incredibly volatile, so if you see good results in the first few weeks, it doesn't mean that those results are going to stick permanently. So I'm not saying you shouldn't use smart bidding strategies at all, but you just need to use them wisely and make sure that you're monitoring your performance thoroughly. Google may also recommend you create entirely new smart campaigns where both the bidding and targeting are completely automated. For most advertisers, this is a really easy way to waste money because not only are you giving Google complete control over who your ads deliver to, you're also giving up any data you could have collected through manual targeting. And last but not least, probably the most clear-cut example of Google attempting to increase your costs is this recommendation to raise your budgets. Now, unless you're paying out of pocket for your ad spend, it's just not that easy, as budget decisions usually need to go through multiple parties for approval. And besides that, I find these budget recommendations are usually pretty arbitrary. In this example, by clicking apply, you can increase your costs by over $300 a week. And this screenshot was taken from an account that's only spending $500 a month, so you can see how big of a jump that is. So the moral of the story is Google Ads recommendations shouldn't replace strategy. You can make these changes with the click of a button, but the reality is some of these need to be more thought out strategic decisions. Hopefully this video has given you some insight into how we manage Google Ads. If you need help managing your campaigns, feel free to reach out to us to find out how we can help.